Is up, everybody? What is up, everybody? Today in this video, we're talking about spiritual awakening, spiritual detox, and emotional healing crisis symptoms.
Yes.
Plus, stay to the end for a secret weapon to take your badass life to the next level.
That's right. So if you are watching live, give us a hashtag live fam. If you're watching on the replay, do a little hashtag replay fam. Before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to this really sweet young man who approached us the other night, 2 nights ago in the market, and was like, do you guys have a YouTube channel? And he just expressed to us that he's getting so much out of the videos and helped him through a hard time. So I want to give to Darnell.
What is up, Darnell?
Thank you so much. You really don't have any idea how much it meant to give you a hug out in the real world. So thank you for that. If you guys are coming online right now,
let us know where you're from. Help David out with his geography.
It really is helping him because he
really
sucks at geography. He's like, where's Iceland? Who's that in Australia? So anyway, but he's getting better.
Is that on the moon?
Yeah, let us know. Say hi. I say good morning. Tell us where you're from. I see already coming online. Nima, Elizabeth. Good morning to you guys. Really happy,
Aaron.
And Aaron is online. So guys, if you are just getting to know us, my name is Heather.
And I'm David.
From San Rose Garden.
Yes. Helping people create
badass lives.
Bing.
That's what we do. And that's why my camo hat is on today. So this is going to be a fun one. And it's one that we actually did this video about a year ago and requested from the ladies coach ladies on what we resist and why. And we did a Snapchat video of it, and it's on YouTube. And one of our viewers saw it and they were like, this is really lame because it keeps going on and off because it's Snapchat. So we were like, let's redo it.
Yeah. So Snapchat way back in the day used to give you only 6 seconds before it would reset. That sucked.
So
try doing a live like this in 6-second increments.
But we did a little show called Bedhead Diaries on there and put a lot of those videos on YouTube. But we thought we would approach this topic. But let me talk a little bit about the emotional and spiritual healing crisis, because sometimes we don't know what it is. Well, some people can experience a spiritual healing crisis or an emotional healing crisis as the result of a healing session of any kind.
And we'll get into what that means and why that's so significant in a minute.
It's part of the process.
Yes.
That's what you have to understand.
Yes.
It's part of the process of healing, but it's one that sometimes can be surprising,
Right.
shocking, and unexpected. And it's one that can happen that could force you out of going any further with digging deeper into those scary parts of yourself that you have hidden.
And the mind itself is wired to avoid pain. So when we've got an experience like this that isn't necessarily feeling the best, your mind really wants to kind of put the brakes on it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So we're going to break down some spiritual purging symptoms, including what you might experience after a reiki session.
So what we want to know from you guys today in the comments is, have you ever had any kind of an emotional healing session or mental healing session, felt relieved, but then over the next couple days, you felt like crap?
Right.
So let us know in the comments if you've ever had those kinds of moments. And if you want to share the details, by all means, we love hearing the stories and we love helping you out on that element as well.
So if you've had a kind of a spiritual crisis where it was like that dark night of the soul, let us know. So let's make sure you're in the right place. If you are curious about spiritual healing crisis symptoms and want to know more about that spiritual detox that you may or may not have experienced, you're in the right place.
Right. And you don't need to be here if you've never experienced any sadness, grief, loss, or depression in your life ever, or if you don't find value in knowing yourself more on an emotional, mental level better.
Or if you're a robot, then you don't need to be here, but we want to know you if you're a robot.
Yes, please.
Text us because that's kind of cool.
Matter of fact, reach into my brain if you're a robot and let me know that you're here.
So let's talk about resistance really quick before we get into the tips about what the spiritual crisis is and how to deal with it. So resistance is wanting to protect yourself. We experience resistance when we want to protect ourselves from the pain of an unfinished grief process. And that grief process can be anything, emotional, mental, spiritual.
It can be your old stuff coming up to the surface.
But what we resist persists and keeps coming back if we don't deal with it. It's this cycle of stuffing it and bringing it back up and going, no, not ready. So this is when it does come up and you look at it and you deal deal with it. It might be what we call a healing crisis or the dark night of the soul, but we're going to kind of go into what that looks like a little bit more. You can experience it like right after a healing session, like an intentional healing session, or a life-changing experience that you didn't choose.
Right. Something that wasn't intentional on your part, that happened, like a life circumstance that happened that threw you into this crisis.
And this crisis might be something pushing to the surface that you can no longer ignore.
Right.
It can no longer be ignored because you've been stuffing it so long, and life has happened in such a way that it pushes it to the surface, and you got to look at it.
You know, when you sweep everything under the rug and you start to notice this huge lump.
Right.
Nobody does that, right?
Well, it's either by choice or because life pushed you onto a busy freeway at rush hour, and you just tripped over that bump in the carpet. So one of those two things are going to happen. So that's a little bit about resistance. We resist it because we know it's going to be painful.
Right. But with practice, you get more comfortable with, and your mind gets more familiar with the process and what happens after the crisis. Okay. So before we get into that, I wanted to give a couple shout outs to Sean and Chelsea. Thanks for joining us. Ashley, thanks for joining us. Chelsea says, did you feel it? She's like the robot reaching into my mind. Erica says, I did a Reiki session for my sister and this happened. Yeah. Absolutely. And Erica, welcome from New York. Aaron says, another wave I'm riding currently. Woke up in a cold sweat the night before I went to bed under super heavy energies. Absolutely.
You know, stuff's coming up.
Elizabeth says, yes, I experienced this. I will do the meditations, feel better. Then the following day, I'm a crazy cleaning freak. Yeah, that can happen too. And what's up to Melanie and Debbie? Thanks for joining us.
You guys, exciting to have you here with us this morning. So we're going to talk about tip number 1 before we get into kind of the symptoms that you guys are already talking about. Right. I want to talk about tip number 1, which is how you get to that in the first place. There's different pathways, right? So tip number 1 is talk about it and feel it. And feel it.
These are the most beneficial ways for you to get things stirred up and out, because if you're not used to talking, just stuffing it.
So first, and this is where the crisis might start. The root of it is you may or may not intend to start it, but it may just start, like we talked about a minute ago. So talk therapy, what I want to talk about first, which is kind of typically where it starts. You know, first we're talking to our friends and family and close relations about the issue. That might be the first place. And then you might realize they don't have the skill set to deal with it. Right. So you might go to a coach or a therapist. And that's a talk therapy kind of thing that we talk about. So talking about it is the first thing. The second half of it is feeling it.
Right.
So talking about it and analyzing it is the first part. That's for your mind. Yes. But to really release it, you have to feel it in the body on a visceral level.
Right. So speaking of coaches, Crystal Fuentes, the ladies coach, just happened to pop on. And I wanted to say, what is up, lovely? She is one of the best relationship coaches that I have ever met.
Well, and I'm happy that, Crystal, I'm really happy that you popped on this morning. You were in my mind. And because this is a remake of a TLC requested topic a year ago from Bedhead Diaries, and we thought it was a really good time to redo it and expand on it. So I want to talk about this thing about talking and analyzing and feeling. That's kind of the 3-step process in really releasing emotions. So when you feel it, when you get to, I think we all get the talking about it because we're talking about it now, right? I think we get the analyzing it because we're analyzing it right now. But the feeling it is the problematic part. So often that feeling is not allowed to rise for that 3rd step. So to feel what it is you need to release. It's not forced.
Yeah, and that's a key component. When you're in some kind of an environment where the feelings start to come up, you don't want to force it. You want to allow it. And you don't really want somebody outside of you forcing it either, because that's not going to be healthy. Your body's going to resist, your mind's going to resist, your heart's going to resist even more the more that you get pushed. So you don't want to find somebody that pushes you into your process. You want to find somebody that allows you the process of feeling it, experiencing it, analyzing it, thinking about it, but also the feeling part of it. And Crystal, we are always so synced up. She says, oh my God, I was just talking about this in a podcast yesterday.
We tend to do the same topics and not even have a conversation. But I want to talk about, I'm going to give you guys an insider trick, a coaching trick. So if any of you are life coaches, healers, or such, I want you to raise your hands. If you do this type of healing work as a living, just raise your hand. Here is a little trick that you might have noticed over your work, but it is something we talk about in coaching training and healer training. There's a thing called therapist pleasing.
Ooh.
Okay, we don't talk about this because this is an insider secret. Often sometimes because you're so used to stuffing that feeling.
And because we want acceptance.
You're going to stuff that emotion. But when it's time to feel it, you may every once in a while have a client that provokes the feeling. So you're not authentic. They may not authentically really deeply be feeling the emotion, but showing what they should be feeling to the therapist. It's just tricky to spot, but you'll learn how to spot it as a coach or a therapist. It's like a forced feeling. And like I said,
a show. It's more of a show.
Yeah. So you don't get to that feeling part unless you feel it rising, you allow it to rise, and you surrender to it. If you're forcing it, like as in the phenomenon we call therapist pleasing, then it's not truly authentically processing it in a good way. So what happens with a client like that? Like I said, this is the insider secret, guys.
And this doesn't happen often. This is not an often thing.
This is a once in a while, but this is indicative of someone who is created a way to stuff it, but not look like they're stuffing it. To
stuff it by pretending to express it.
So this might even be you. So
I've done it before.
Yeah,
I've totally done it. I've been there.
Maybe not in a therapy session, but notice for you.
For me.
Well, I don't know. Maybe. So notice when you are stuffing it. So you on the inside of you know that you are trying to force this feeling to come up.
It's the fake it till you make it element. And if you're faking it too long, you're still bypassing.
So it's easier in a talk therapy situation to do this, like kind of evoke the feeling in a forceful way, but still stuff the actual emotions. So you have two things going on and they're not authentic.
And this is kind of a little bit more advanced technique type stuff. That
like I told you, I'm throwing something advanced, just wasn't planning on it, but you're welcome. So you may think you're processing the emotion and you might even be fooling yourself because you're talking about it and you think you're feeling it. But notice when you're actually stuffing it. So,
and this is an advanced concept. This is something that you may not even, like Heather's saying, you may not even be consciously aware that you're doing.
We create really complex systems of defense when it comes to our emotions to protect ourselves. And some of those may be, I'm feeling it. See that I'm feeling it, but you're not really, really feeling it. When you're feeling it, it's like balls to bones, right? You're like, oh, it's the ugly cry. You know when you're viscerally feeling it. So
and the other part to this is the release that happens afterwards. If you're giving yourself the freedom to feel it, to experience it, not driving the feeling, but feeling the feeling, then you experience a deeper sense of peace afterwards when you go as deep as you can into the emotion.
So it's like that weight trainer mantra: no pain, no gain. You got to kind of feel the pain. So that is kind of where the value of doing any kind of visceral work as a companionship to your talk therapy, like Reiki or massage even, because some massage, after you've been really working on the feeling or the talking and analyzing it, I've had massages where they weren't necessarily a healer, but they evoked something viscerally and I just started crying.
Yeah. And here's the thing with that is when you're talking about the visceral experience, the experience within your body, you're talking about an emotional charge that is stored somewhere in your physical body. Okay, so it's this crazy thing where your body itself has this emotional memory. So it can get triggered in certain positions with certain techniques like Reiki, massage, craniosacral therapy, even shamanism. Right. So it taps into and accesses those places that are still storing the emotion in your body and giving you a way to release that.
So it's a kind of picture like when you, maybe not that you're doing this on a regular basis, but when you experience, you swallow poison, right?
Because everybody does that on a regular basis.
You know, your kid swallows, well, Christian, my son, tried to help me with his cold when he was little and drank an entire bottle of cough syrup. And so we had to give him the throw up stuff, right?
Heck.
Yeah, I think I talked about this on the Bedhead
Mhm.
Diaries version.
Yeah.
And my ex-husband like had him on his head. I have no idea why in the backyard trying to get him to throw up, and he threw up all over his head. So you have to
That was great.
you have to
Like I was there.
experience the trauma a little bit in a visceral way in order to release it. So it's like swallowing and throwing up poison. Stefan Williams, who's one of my favorite Jungian dream analysts, said that in order for healing to truly deeply be cathartic and real, one must experience some of the trauma in a visceral way, not the whole thing,
Mhm.
in order to just not purge it from the mind, but purge it from the body as well.
Right.
This is the part we're scared of.
Mhm. And the ugly cry is a real, actual therapeutic event.
Yes.
This is you viscerally experiencing, almost on an uncontrollable level, that release itself.
But what happens when we viscerally experience it in a throwing up the poison kind of way is that we might experience some of the same physical effects, like the adrenaline rush, a little bit of the trauma, a little bit of the fight or flight, a little bit of the freak out. And that's what we're going to talk about next.
Right. And sometimes those cold sweats that you experience, or sometimes even physical purging.
So I want to talk about clutter just real quick. I want to ask you guys a question. Have you ever, now we're in the middle of refurbishing our house and what's it called? Redoing bathrooms and stuff like that.
Remodeling.
Remodeling. So here's what happens is that after a certain amount of time, when you start to clean things out, you realize that you've gotten used to a certain level of clutter over time, little by little by little by little, and you've ignored it. Oh, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do that tomorrow. And then one day you open a closet and all this stuff comes tumbling out and makes a mess all over your life, like your emotional closet. All of a sudden it just opens and then there's an emotional mess over your whole life because you've ignored and stuffed. Raise your hand if you've done that. I want to see the hands raised in the comments because I know that every single one of you has done that because I have.
Yep.
Like I said, all the robots are not here because they left at the beginning of this live. So
no, Chelsea's still here. Anyway, Chelsea says, I called it the chameleon effect. Okay. When you're doing the people pleasing, the therapist pleasing. And then Sean says, I know that feeling. I find myself that's not going to be your normal, and you will get through it to a place where you find more stability and build a better foundation. But we're talking about the after effects of the purge, the cleansing, the detox afterwards.
We're going to talk about the symptoms right now, which is what you've been waiting to, like, what are these weird symptoms that you might experience? I like the term getting woke, and that's kind of a newer term, but this is nothing new. Like the dark night of the soul is an ancient concept, and it's what happens whenever we release something on a psychological, spiritual, soul, body level that is not us anymore.
Right.
It's when we're ready to look at it.
So now we're going to go to tip number 2, and this is recognize the symptoms. These can be positive or negative. Some of those can be sweating, shaking. You get hyper emotional, like Sean was talking about, the ugly cry. You even physically purge. I remember when I was going through parts of my woke state, when I would literally just purge on the ground, no reason for it. It wasn't like I ate any bad food or anything. Fun. It was a literal, it lasted like 30 seconds. It was just bleh and done.
So here's why. The body, the mind, and the spirit are not separate entities. So your body's kind of remembering whatever that trauma was and like, oh my gosh, that happened. It's real. And kind of experiencing it and going through it and reframing it in a more powerful way. But that means you got to feel through the event a little bit. So this is why we're scared. I mean, they really can be like flu-like symptoms. I remember after one really significant session 10 years ago, after 11, 12 years ago. Yeah, it's been a while. I was laying on the bed shaking and sweating and like, what in the heck is going on for like 24 hours? And here's the thing. You might have your session with your Reiki session or craniosacral session.
Whatever kind of session.
Whatever kind of session it is, even a massage. And something might come up. You might feel great right away.
Initially.
And then you might go home for the next 24 hours to 3 days and just feel like shaking. And this is where I think you find that over and over in the wisdom literatures, you see the 3 days in the tomb.
The 3 days of darkness.
Right, the 3 days of darkness. You see this 3 days repeated so many times. And in the healing arts, and I'm not talking just Reiki or whatever, but massage and any kind of body work.
Right.
3 days tends to be a typical time when the body is releasing something old. So I think this has roots. This is
that goes way back.
Right.
It's an old wisdom.
I think healers and sages and
mystics across
have known
time.
that it's kind of a 3-day process.
Yeah.
Like,
so what happens here is when you've got these things, especially if this is kind of new to you and you're just starting to get woke, you start to freak out in your mind and you start to wonder, what did I open? Is this some portal to hell that's opened and it's never going to close again? Did this person do something to me? And that's a big one. That's a big one. Did this person cause something? Did they put some bad mojo or bad juju on me?
So sometimes we can, when we experience the healing, when we feel really good and then we suddenly experience a healing crisis, it's the dark night of the soul. You got to have the ugly cry. If you're feeling it come up, you might, your defense mechanisms are coming back up.
Right.
You're like, did this person do something bad?
Right.
Now, sometimes you might be feeling, because you're so open and vulnerable, you might be feeling some of the person's stuff. Usually if it's a good therapist, they know how to, like, my stuff is out the door,
right?
Whatever my issues are not in the session. So that's how we operate. We close the door to our personal stuff when we're in session with you.
And for those of you who do any kind of work that evokes this kind of a thing, let your clients know that it'll typically take maybe about 3 days to a week to process through what has come up. That's one of the things that we like to do after every session is we'll let somebody know, okay, so a lot of stuff came up and it may take you a couple days to maybe a week to process through what happened.
So let's talk about client responsibility as the person going in for healing, and therapist responsibility. Therapist responsibility is your shit is not your client's shit. So do whatever it is, a little meditation, a 5-minute, leave my stuff outside the door, work with my client. I'm totally about them and not about me. Bringing your stuff into a session is not appropriate.
My stuff is my stuff, their stuff is their stuff, and I'm here for them in this moment.
So as a client, you might pick up on some of the therapist stuff if they're not intentionally, making sure that that's a separate world, because nobody's perfect.
Right.
A client, I'll always look at, what is this bringing up for me? And is this fear part of my own defense mechanisms trying to protect me from looking at my scary stuff again?
Yeah. And here's another thing with that is, if you focus on this person's stuff got on me, this person that I was working with had their stuff get on me, you're bypassing, because you're focusing on their stuff instead of what this is doing for you. Even if their stuff got on you and you use that as an opportunity to go deeper into your healing and let it be you and let it be your stuff, even if it's their stuff, let it be an opportunity for you instead of a deflection from your healing.
So let's talk about how to get through that.
Right.
Okay, so it's coming up. It's kind of scary. You're going to breathe through it, do some self-care. Don't stuff it back down. That's the number one thing, is don't stuff it back down. It's coming up. But if you guys are familiar with archetypes and the hero's journey, you're going to understand this next part. If you're not, I would encourage you to understand more about the hero's journey, because we go through many hero's journeys in the course of our lives.
Right.
So
I think this is perfect, because HP asked, can this repeat like several times through life? Absolutely, especially when you're starting the process of getting woke. You can go through several different sessions where you have these kinds of events until you're cleared to the point where you have less of those events. It's not saying you're never going to have them again, but when they come up, you'll become more familiar with the process itself. When
you're first getting rid of some really heavy stuff, you're going to have some intense ones. And then as you notice, you kind of get to be a pro at it, right? Yeah. You notice things coming up and you're like, I'm going to go work on that. And you might have something coming up and you know how to do it. I'm going to make myself some tea. I'm going to have a massage. It's going to be great. We're going to coast. Then you're a pro. Yeah. But let me talk about what might happen in that initial hero's journey.
And your responsibility in it.
So usually in the hero's journey, we have some sort of a guide in the beginning. And that's maybe your psychologist or your therapist or your Reiki master or your craniosacral therapist, whatever, or your coach. Right. That's your guide that's helping you through that initial part to figure it out on the way. And then the part you don't expect is now you're on your own.
Where they've got to let go.
And that's your hero moment.
Yes.
So we all want to escape that hero moment, but there is that place where the next part is you've got to fight the dragon on your own. You may set up that initial space to reframe it and to fight the dragon. And we take people through a lot of primal energy releases. Right. You may set that up, but then you might have a period of time where now you're on your own and you have to fight that dragon on your own, because if you don't, you're not going to know that you have the power to fight and conquer that dragon on your own. Yeah. So you might be taken by surprise I thought we already healed this in the
Yeah.
healing session,
Mhm.
but you may be taken by surprise when that moment comes when you have to face that final test.
And when you're alone in it.
But this is where you save yourself,
Yes.
because otherwise you're going to keep going back to, oh, I got to go back to my healer. I got to go, you
Yeah.
might get addicted to someone else helping you.
Mhm.
That's not the point of healing work. It's
Right.
to get you strong enough to fight the dragon on your own.
And when we're talking about the hero's journey, we're talking about that moment where you've got this guide and they lead you up to the cave. When we're talking about the hero's journey, we're talking about the construct from Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to that mouth of that cave and the guide has to let go. That is up to you. That moment when you have to go into your own cave is up to you to face your demons, to face your darkness, to battle your own dragons, to save yourself. When you get to that moment, when you're on your own and you're doing it and you stop looking for somebody else to help you, stop looking for somebody to rescue you and start doing it on your own, that's when you experience that moment of enlightenment, that moment of peace where you're like, I did that. I faced my demon, I conquered my dragon, and now I can emerge from my own cave victorious, out into the light, out into the world, no longer afraid of those things that you were afraid of.
Mm-hmm. I could tell Dave's getting emotional.
A little bit.
I can always tell when he's about to like
Drop some
allow
stuff.
the emotion to come up.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about so those were kind of like the scary symptoms that might come up. Let's talk about some of the positive, unexpected, really cool symptoms that might come up afterwards. And these also might be scary and shocking.
They can be, yeah.
So once you clear the clutter away out of your closet and you wash the floor and you clean the kitchen counter, it's really bright, right?
Right.
So this might be clarity.
Mm-hmm. And that would be tip number 3, clarity.
Yes.
When you go through these moments, and it's like Heather's talking about, it doesn't necessarily have to be bad moments, okay? You can have these moments where you have this epiphany, maybe psychic or intuitive opening or awareness, where you, emotions, where you get this aha moment. Suddenly your life is clear, the clouds part, and you see the way, and it's really awesome. I remember one time when I had a moment like this. I went through a very deep process, getting over depression, and I had a session. And after the session, I remember walking out of the place, and I looked at the trees, and the trees were so green. Every color was just so vivid. It was like the whole world opened up again. And I was in a state of depression for a period of time. So it was a big thing for me to open my eyes literally and see colors brighter, see the world brighter, see the life coming back to the world around me.
Right. It's like if you've had eye surgery and the bandages come off, right? I mean, I had a similar thing happen after. I know I've talked about this before, so sorry,
Mm-hmm.
not sorry. When I had a really deep healing release and I had to get on an airplane the next day, and like I got rid of a bunch of stuff, but all of a sudden everything was super loud and I could sense, my senses were so heightened that I was afraid I couldn't go to the airport. So I had to do a little meditation. I called my healer, who was guiding me through this process, and did a little meditation and sort of centered myself. And then it was still clear, but it was more in my control.
Right.
And it was going to the airport was such a riot because it was like the music was so beautiful and everything was so crisp and clear and wonderful. So that's what I'm talking about, is when you clear the clutter, one of those symptoms might be not the shaking and the negative, but after that is the clarity and the beauty and the appreciation of life and the joy. And that's what we're really looking for at the end of the dark night of the soul. Is after the dark night of the soul is the complete and utter bliss and joy of life. Now you might have something come up later you have to deal with, because healing is cyclical. It's not like you fix everything at once
and you're done.
You couldn't handle it mentally.
Right.
You know, you've got layers of stuff. You're an onion, right?
Or an ogre. So HP says, and as a guide, it's sometimes hard to let go. Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest parts of being a guide, is working on your stuff to the point where you're not attached to somebody's process. They're going to go through their dark nights, and you're just going to realize that they have to handle their pieces on their own. And you're a guide You're not doing it for them.
Yeah. HP, I think that brings up a really good point, and it's good for coaches and healers to understand that it's not your responsibility to heal your client. It's your responsibility to guide them, but also to understand when you are enabling them.
Yes.
You know, you don't want them to keep coming back for healing. Oh, I can help you. It's understanding when to let go and let them fall on their ass, because falling on your ass is sometimes the biggest part of the healing process.
And sometimes the key that they need.
So if your client's using you as a crutch, fix me, then they're not getting anywhere and you're just taking their money.
Yeah. And you're not really being as efficient as you possibly can or as helpful.
Yeah. And that could be coming from you with that really
people pleasing.
Well, not people pleasing, but the big heart of wanting to help and heal.
Right.
And this is an overextension as a healer. You want to help so much, but you're also hurting yourself.
Right.
So drop a heart in the comments if you guys are getting this. I think you guys are. I'm loving your comments. This is really pretty awesome.
Yep. So Chelsea says, I puked daily for 3 years until I woke up and realized it wasn't doctor fixable, which means that was on you. And good on you for realizing that. And then she says, I cried on the treadmill yesterday because a song made me think of how much Sean really loves me. What the fuck? Yes, those moments are awesome. And again, when you have those moments and you feel something, give yourself the freedom to feel it. Even if it's 5 minutes, give yourself the freedom, whether it's good or bad or indifferent or whatever. It's an emotion, it's coming up and it wants to be felt. It wants to be released. Give it the honor, 5 minutes, and then process it. And then get back to it.
Let me make it real for you.
Yeah.
Okay. You poop and you pee after you eat food. At some point, I hope, right? And if you don't for a while, you get all backed up and you get toxic.
Constipated.
If you sweat, right? So if you don't cry and release emotionally, that's your body's emotional mental waste system. So some people say, I don't ever cry. I don't ever feel emotions. Well,
then you're obviously constipated.
Like either you're a robot or you're emotionally constipated.
Or you're an emotionally constipated robot.
Your crying is your emotional waste system. So let it happen if you feel it come up. Okay. You know what I mean? So let me make it real. So
now it's time for that bonus tip.
Decide or be pushed.
You can either bring it into you guiding the ship, or you can let the world happen to you.
So on one hand, you have to be ready for healing work,
of course,
but you also have to recognize, like we said, when you're stuffing it and ignoring it. So you may know you are ready, but you're ignoring the signs because you're still a chicken.
No offense to chickens.
Right. But the universe / God, your higher power, is a funny thing, because once you know you are ready inside, and you've kind of like, part of you's like, I know I really should. I'll do it next week. Your higher power might decide that you need a little push.
Yep. And at this point, you may decide and act and go out and get the healing that you need, or have a session with somebody, or find a coach, find a therapist, whatever it is for you. Or you're going to be pushed. You're going to, God, the universe is just going to be like, here you go. You're ready.
Raise your hand. I've been pushed. Face down on the pavement.
Like Elvis.
Face down like Elvis.
Who's the god of Las Vegas.
He is the god of Las Vegas. We don't talk about it like Fight Club, but we all know that it's true.
And we've also decided.
Granted, it was after I experienced the face down like Elvis part several times, but it's better to decide, like, okay, I'm just going to go handle this, because then you kind of have more of a choice on how you're going to handle it, rather than your emotional mess, in the middle of the freeway splat. So, you guys,
HP says, when I learned I was a healer, I would take on the hurt around me till I puked. Then I was shown how to release. And again, that's one of those, you get pushed on the pavement until you're like, you know what? I cannot be a good healer if I'm continuously puking everybody's crap out of my mouth.
Yes. And here, I want to give you guys here's the thing about Hollywood.
Right.
So, Hollywood is cool. And I love watching movies about, things that we do that are like larger than life. But often you see the shaman portrayed, or the healer portrayed as, I'm grabbing my phone because it's my prop. Why do I do that? The shaman is like,
that's a rattle.
I do not know why.
Their shaman's rattle.
On the TV, you often see the healer taking on all the pain of the person, and then they're going to be sick. It's really going to hurt me. I'm going to go through this whole thing. They're not ready to be a healer yet.
No.
So in the real world of healing, you've got boundaries, not walls.
Yes.
And let me be clear about
Yes.
this, because many healers think they have to have walls.
Right.
But guess what? You're not as effective as a healer. As a healer,
Mhm.
you're blending and melding and having compassion for your client, but understanding that their stuff is not your stuff.
And that they are the ones ultimately that need to process for their journey and for their growth. You cannot do that for them, because even if you did, even if you took on all of their crap and you were able to release it in that moment, they will still generate more because they need the lesson.
So it's not like the movies. It's not like the shaman on TV that's like lying sick for 3 days trying to purge and release the client stuff.
Right.
They're not ready to be a shaman yet. I don't know who let them pass a shaman graduation.
Still, right.
So understand that boundaries, not walls.
Yep.
Boundaries allow you to understand what's yours and what is not, and to be very present for your client.
But it's also an experience of what we call detached compassion.
Yes.
Where you're still compassionate, you're still with them in that moment while you're in the session. You are deep with them in whatever they need to be, but then you let go, because their stuff is their stuff and they need it. All you're doing in that moment is you're providing this space for them to do what they're ready for.
And this doesn't just apply to the people who do the hands-on work. This also applies to coaches, psychologists, anyone that does intimate emotional work with people need to kind of look at, we all do need to look at whatever fears we have. So when, as a professional, take time to do your own work. That's very important. And what are my fears coming up around not being able to help my client? What are my fears around their stuff sticking to me? So all those things are important on both ends.
Yes. And use all of this as an opportunity for your growth. Whether you're a therapist, whether you're a healer, whether you're somebody getting work done, okay? Use all of life as an opportunity for you to take yourself to the next level. Speaking of the next level, you just learned spiritual awakening, spiritual detox, and emotional healing crisis symptoms, as well as some techniques. Now it's time for that secret weapon.
So we want to know where you are on your personal self-growth journey. It's going to be 1, 2, and 3. I want to see in the comments. Is it level 1?
And level 1 is where you're just starting. If you're just starting and this is kind of new and you're dipping your toe in the water, then we've got a bunch of free resources, tons of meditations, videos, classes to get you started on your journey. All of these links are in the description. Or you might be level 2.
So level 2 is when you've been practicing for a little while, maybe 6 months to a year, and you're just kind of like dipping your toe into the analyzing part, right?
And you're getting better. You're getting better. You've had a little time around the block and you've been doing this for a while. We've got our free Badass Facebook group where we do weekly giveaways. We go live twice a week with self-growth tips to help you create a badass life.
And then our favorite, level 3, is when you're ready to level up. And this is where we have created our Zen Ed Self-Growth Academy, we've got
multiple teachers. It's a place for you to master your life, master your emotions, master your relationships with experts, and 20 plus new live classes every month, plus all the replays, and just awesome people, awesome teachers, experts.
So actually a few are online with us now. We got Erin Herlihy, who's online with us right now on Facebook. She is our angel card reader, and we've got Crystal Fuentes, who's our relationship coach. We got a couple of our teachers here actually hanging out with us this morning on Saturday.
we've got some of our ride or dies here. We've got Chelsea, we've got Sean, and Nima, Matthew,
Ashley. Thank you guys for joining us. Bonus, coming up in a couple of weeks is our next 7-day meditation challenge. It's going to be the self-love meditation challenge. The link is in the description if you want to join it. 7 days live with us, doing meditations and classes on self-love. So much needed for the beginning of the year, because if you've got some self-love, your goals are going to roll out a lot easier.
And we do a live 7-day meditation challenge every single month with a new topic every month, a new theme every month. You can use that link in the description to figure out what we've got going on each month, depending on when you're watching this. I did also want to say what's up to Valerie, who's new. Thanks for joining us. We've got a couple level 3s, Ride or Die level 3. Thanks, Chelsea. Lorena, level 3. Elizabeth, 2/3.
That's good. That's good.
And Erica says 3, but not trusting and believing in myself and my abilities. That would be kind of a 2/3. So thank you guys for joining us. We know Oh,
You know,
go.
I want to also, if you guys are, we've got till the end of the year, if you're watching this live, we've got a special link. I think David will have to drop it for a session, a holiday session special. So if you want to get some of that last minute junk cleared out of the trunk before New Year's Eve, you can hit that link and actually get a special session with us. So he's doing it right now. So you guys, thank you guys for joining us. We are so happy to see you guys here Saturday morning. I know you got to get off on doing your shopping and finish, then wrap that up.
And we understand that time is a very, very precious and valuable commodity. And the fact that you guys have chosen to spend that time with us is absolutely,
just getting verklempt again.
Absolutely honored and appreciated. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate you guys spending that time with us. So if you like that, button,
if you liked my button, if you like this video, hit the like button.
If this video helped you in any way, share it with a friend.
If you guys have any questions or comments or what you want to see next, we would love to hear from you. Leave it in the comments.
For more badass life tips, be sure to subscribe.
And click the bell to turn notifications on so you are the first to know
when we drop a new video
or go live.
Thanks for watching.
See you guys in the next video. Wherever it is.
It might be somewhere. It might be there. It might be elsewhere.
Have a good one, you guys. We'll see you next time.